Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk. Coffee Talk is a program that we do to connect, to show the dynamic between architects and developers. And of course, today we have probably the most active duo and probably the most recognizable duo out there right now. And you've done some amazing work together. But first, before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, Burden Accounting, for making this happen. We have some wealthy people on this program. You guys, if you guys need any accounting, Burden, those guys are you guys. If you have a bank account, you want to use Burden. I think they do a great job, and I want to thank those guys for sponsoring this program. Today, we have Gregg Pasquarelli from Shop Architects and Michael Stern from JDS. The first thing I want to know is understand how this relationship came to be.
I'll tell you how it started. When we were looking for the right architects to do American Copper, I sought Gregg out because I had just seen their work on Barclays Center. And I said, I thought it was an incredibly ballsy design. And, it was a political hot potato. And they stepped in with a very bold design that, was going to be polarizing no matter what. And they didn't shy away from it. And I said, I have to meet the guy with the balls to do that.
Right.
So I went to meet Gregg, and it was love at first sight.
So you sought him out. It wasn't like Gregg cold calling developers trying to get work. Gregg, it's pretty amazing. The Barclays Center design. You guys were a relatively young firm to get a project that big at that time. There was a lot of people bidding for that project. A lot of architects who've been around for much longer than you guys have.
That was originally a Frank Gehry master plan and design, and because of the financial crisis, they had to change direction. And I think that we got the project because Forest City really looked at some of the ways, even though we hadn't done very large projects, I think some of the ways we were designing and building and actually getting involved in the fabrication and the way in which buildings get put together, I think they saw was so forward thinking that they gave us the opportunity to try it at a much larger scale.
At that point, most developers would be like, I'm just going to put up 2 boxes and make it a rental building. You just don't see rental buildings with the kind of elements that you guys have. I mean, I see some of the Barclays Center, the copper, I think that Barclays Center has, you see it, on the American Copper building, but did you think that you would be able to do that kind of a design, taking it from paper to actual practice and making it happen?
Well, I mean, look, good buildings are only the result of a great relationship between a client and an architect, right? And you can sort of see, you can almost look at the buildings that those pairings, like you could look at the result of the building and you can tell how strong the relationship was between the client and the architect, because the best work comes out of the best relationship. The great thing about working with Michael is it's very quick. We're both very fast in the way in which we talk about the things that we're trying to do, what the desires are, what the challenges are, and how we're going to try and solve problems and how we're going to push design. And Michael was unbelievably receptive and then really sort of carried the ball in being able to figure out.
I think that zoning I'm sure it was very difficult to do, but again, like if another developer had taken that piece of land, they would not have those buildings there. There's a much easier way to go about that project than the way you guys went about it. And it really stands out. I mean, it's one of the things that stands out on the East River is the American Copper building.
Yeah, something that I was always very cognizant of about that particular site. That building is right in the foreground of any image you take of the Empire State Building from the east side.
Michael, you're a young guy, but you still know that when you do a rental project, you're not going all out on the design. I mean, you know that. You want every building you build to be amazing and you want it to look nice. But that just looking at it, it looked like a really challenging building. Not only, the design part of it, I think it looks great on paper and you're like, yeah, that looks great if you could actually build it. But then you guys manage actually to put it together, which is...
Yeah, so I'll say something about that also. And one of the reasons I love working with Shop and the team that they have, our challenge is to take something that looks dynamic and amazing and surreal, which is I think what the final design does, and make it look like it's so exotic, people wonder how we built it. The curtain wall is actually a lot more simple than it looks, and that's an engineering challenge in itself, because if we couldn't figure out how to afford to build it, the design would get so diluted, it would just look like everything else. So one of the big credits to our team and the shop team and the incredible team we have as a self-performing CM.
What is it like working with Michael? What makes him stand out?
It's absolutely amazing. And, I think that Michael and I share the same quality in when somebody tells us we can't do it, we immediately say, why not? And let's figure out a way around it. I think we share a lot of a responsibility to the city that we're working in, that you can't just put up any building that's been done 100 times over, that it's ours.
Right, just walk down 6th Avenue and, half of 6th Avenue is the same exact buildings as you.
Yeah. When we were working on 111 West 57th Street, Michael and I had a conversation where we said, look, several dozen extraordinarily wealthy people are going to live inside this building, which will be magnificent, but 8 million of us have to live with the building every single day. And Michael was incredibly committed to making the exterior of the building as special as the interior of the building.
What really makes Michael stand out compared to all the developers you work with?
Well, I love all the developers that I work with.
I'm sure you do.
but I think what's really interesting about Michael is that he obviously understands real estate, city making, place making, branding, aesthetics, architecture, art. And then he equally understands how a four-pipe system works. He equally understands how the foundation goes in. He obviously understands all the financing thing. And, so there's the metaphor in baseball of a 5-tool player.
Yeah.
And, Michael is I think development's 6-tool player.
There's like 3 kinds of developers. There's the marketing kind of developer who's just a major great at marketing. There are the finance guys that never walk the construction side but are able to put the money together. And they're the construction guys. And, that's, I think, one of the reasons why Michael has been able to succeed so much is because he has the ability to do 2 out of 3 of those things really well. I was telling a couple of folks in my office that I was going to talk to you, Gregg, and one of them asked, a lot of people don't know this, but Gregg is a Quaker, and so are his partners. And how do a couple of Quakers make it happen in the rough and tumble world of New York real estate?
Well, my partners are Quakers. As I was saying, I was married as a Quaker, and my kids go to Quaker school. I'm not technically a Quaker, but I will say that SHOP actually uses a lot of Quaker values in the design process, and that's really having a very open discussion, a non-hierarchical discussion, and building consensus.
Yeah, I will say that one thing SHOP does really well, there's a way to build consensus to mediocrity, or there's a way to build consensus to excellence. And I think that SHOP gives its team, all the input, but ultimately the principals will step in and make a decision that needs to be made.
Michael, every major project that you've done with Gregg. All the really unique ones, Steinway Tower, American Copper Building, 9 DeKalb, these are all done with SHOP. Specifically,
I'm going to do the same thing that Gregg just did. We love all of our architects, but John Cetra is a fantastic architect that we've worked with many times, and Jean Avell we're doing a project with, and there's some great architects out there, but Gregg and his team are special. I don't know what other architect could have given us the integrity of design with all the obstacles on that site, with one of the most important landmarks in Brooklyn, and the responsibility of the skyline of creating the most iconic building that Brooklyn will see for a generation.
You really do stand out. And it's hard to be an architect, to be able to be a paper architect who says, oh man, wouldn't it be great if we did this, and actually get it built.
We really wanted every building to kind of emerge from the neighborhood, the context, the program, and the client that we were teaming with. But what was consistent through all the projects was an absolute dedication to figuring out how you make it and build it, like how to break down that complexity into something that can be executed.
And the stuff you guys did on the waterfront in Brooklyn, when I first saw the rendering for that, I was like, no way that's going to get built. And then next thing I know, it's gone up, which is pretty impressive. And,
by the way, that's usually the hallmark of a successful design. When the first rendering comes out and the comments are, well, that'll never get built. certainly happened on American Copper. We probably hit the design right.
You meet the architects who are just so focused on the design aspect of it, and who are so desperate to get their design out that they tend to have. We meet a lot of broke architects, right? Who manage to design a lot of buildings. You guys seem to have both. You seem to have like the design part of it down, and you seem to have a thriving business as well. What do you account to that?
We always wanted to be a both and firm. Fierce designers pushing the limit of everything you could do from a conceptual standpoint, but absolutely rooted in finance and technology and construction and politics.
Do you consider yourself a developer's architect?
You know what I love? That you can't really put shop in a box, right? Like we're doing university buildings, we're doing parks, we're doing office buildings, we're doing cultural buildings, we're doing developer buildings, and that's what makes me incredibly proud is that
right.
We're not, and I think it's kind of sometimes hard to describe what shop is. It's this open workshop of an architecture firm, and all we really care about is working with great people and doing good work. So that's why it's fun to work with Michael.
Do you think that some of the stuff that's happened with COVID, is that going to have a sort of a burden on design going forward? And Michael, this is for you as well. Do you feel like some of the liberties that you could take with a building and with a development, well, some of those liberties, you're going to have to, have smaller spaces or more open spaces, whatever the design has to be. Do you think that the pandemic is going to have any lasting impacts on design going forward?
I have utmost confidence in people's inability to remember anything very long. So I'll just go back to 9/11. No one was ever going to live in the financial district. No one was ever going to live in a tall building. No one was ever going to fly in a commercial airplane ever again. What happened? The sort of super tall boom emerged. Financial district became a thriving residential neighborhood, and the commercial airlines had their best run ever from a profitability standpoint shortly thereafter. So I think that if anyone thinks they're going to kind of write New York off or think that the trend towards urbanization and density around transit is just going to stop and reverse, they're wrong, in my opinion. I think that it's still appropriate to build density near mass transit in urban areas responsibly and with good design. I think that trend's going to continue.
The number one reason people come to the city is for jobs, right? And the number one reason corporations come to cities is because of the talent pool. So now that talent is being redistributed, right? Those companies don't necessarily have to be in New York. Even if you have an impact of 10% on the city, I mean, that 10% vacancy in a building is absolutely horrible. So You don't think there's going to be like some sort of impact from all the stuff that's happening?
I do. I think that impact will be real, and I think it'll be relatively short term. I look at kind of the longer arc of history in the city, and if you look at a long enough arc, not incredibly long, but a reasonably long arc, this city, I believe in the city, and I believe the city will be healthy and strong. And I think that our next industry that drives office demand, we don't even know what it is. I mean, New York really didn't have a tech sector not that many years ago. A couple of years before.
Facebook, who has like 1.5 million square feet in Hudson Yards, is telling their people that they can work from home. And when people say you can work from home, they don't mean go to Brooklyn. They mean go work in Dallas, where the price of a one bedroom is $2,000, and your kids can go to public schools and all of this other stuff, right? So it's not like they're still going to be in the vicinity.
I hear you, but I'll challenge you that, what 20-something-year-old coming out of college wants to live near their parents in, Kalamazoo. I think they're still going to be drawn to cities. It's not only about jobs. It's also about culture and art and all these other factors and all the services and accessibility that a city brings you. If I were to tell you 15 years ago that Facebook and Google would be such driving forces in the office world, you would tell me, what are you basing that? I don't know what the next big industry is. What is the next industry? It'll be something, because the cities are incredibly attractive. New York is just a special place that's always going to draw the best, the brightest, and there's going to be demand, and people are going to want to live here.
No one wishes that you're true more than me. I bought my office space. Okay, so rest assured, I'm with you on that. I hope you're right. Greg, how do you think your designs are going to change as a result of all this? And do you think it's going to put more restrictions on you? And
I think right after it happened, we said the same. We were on the phone and we were like, Just like 9/11, we were never going to build another skyscraper again. We knew that, and now look where we are. But I think from our design, look, it's no one's abandoning offices. No one's going to abandon the open plan. It's because that's really about community and culture in your office. And that's what's really important, because it's really a place for groups of various sizes and configurations to sort of come together safely to exchange like ideas and information, right? Because it's about making the human connections based on empathy and problem solving. That's where creativity happens, and that's the value of an office.
Office work generally, it was like you show up to the office from 9 to 5 and you do the work that you're given between those hours, and you have your separation of life and work. And he was suggesting that going forward, that jobs are just going to be project-based, right? Okay, Greg, this is your job. I don't care what hours of the day you do it in, where you do it in. As long as this is done, you're employed here and you're. Yep. And I thought that was a very interesting way of looking at it, because it's so true for my business. Like I don't care. People don't have to do their work between the hours of 9 to 5. They can do it any time as long as they get it done. It's it's for us.
Absolutely, but you still need that place to congregate, because it's those sort of happenstance exchanges where ideas pop up when you don't even expect them to. So you need that focus time. You can do it any hours of the day, but you still need to come together to exchange ideas.
You're doing a major project on Brickell. I'm guessing, since this is the largest project you've done, if I'm not mistaken, you're probably going to Gregg for this. Is this the first project outside of New York you're doing with Gregg?
It's our first project outside of New York, yeah. We're very excited about. This is a tower that, as I said, and I think is an appropriate urban model. It's a 2.5 million square foot mixed use development. It's true mixed use. It has about 1,000 multifamily rental units, 200 micro units, a 200 key hotel, 250,000 feet of office, a parking component, and a large wellness component. It's right next to a great little park called Southside Park that we're going to completely renovate.
The agreement with the city to do that?
It was, yeah. So we're doing a few things with the city who we've worked very closely with, providing a new fire station for the city. A lot of their infrastructure is very dated, so we're going to give them a brand new state-of-the-art fire station. And in exchange for that, we're going to do a number of improvements to the park and some other things with the city.
Michael, I don't want you to say anything here, but Greg, how much of those designs come from Michael? Just give me a percentage in terms of the exterior of the design. What percentage of it would you say comes from Michael?
You can't separate it. It's 100%.
It doesn't really work like that.
It doesn't work like that. It's
100% collaborative.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that when you guys did the American Copper building, did Michael say, well, I want a slant in the second building?
No, I'll speak to it. I mean, what I do is I always want to start with, you don't have limitations. I want to start with, there are no limitations other than, what's theoretically feasible and what's legal. Beyond that, there are no limitations, and let's work backwards from there. If something ends up being too exotic, too expensive, then we'll adjust. But if I start with, well, here are all the limitations that you have to your design, and then come back and give me something dynamic, but I've kind of put you in a box, I'm going to be very limited in what I get back. The designs are ultimately his. Right. I build them, he designs them. I can take credit for saying what I don't like or making an adjustment because it's not feasible. But at the end of the day, the concepts are Gregg and his team's. They're his designs and they're iconic. And he should take full credit that he deserves. He's going to be too diplomatic. They're his.
Well, look, architecture is a team sport, and so it's everyone at shop rolling up their sleeves and doing it together. But like I said before, you only get great buildings when you have a great partnership with your client. So that's why I would say there's no way to measure who's doing what at one point.
Each one of you think of the project. What's your favorite project that you guys have worked together on?
They all have something that's very special about them. I mean, I'm a kid that grew up in sort of the boroughs in Long Island and stared at that skyline my whole life and dreamed of maybe one day putting a mark on it. And so, 111 West 57th Street is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I've been in the Hudson Valley for most of the last 10, 11 weeks, and came back into the city yesterday, and you come over this rise north in Westchester, and you can see it on the skyline, and my heart skipped a little bit.
Michael, which one is yours?
As Gregg said, and not being diplomatic, they're all different, and I really do love them all. They're all fantastic. I think 111 is going to be absolutely iconic, but what I'm most excited about at this moment is 9 DeKalb, because it's going up right now, so it's always the newest, shiniest toy at this moment. But it's one of one. It's going to be the tallest building in Brooklyn, I think, for a very, very long time. It's really iconic. We really poured our heart and soul into that facade and that massing. The building will, I think, as good as it looks in renderings, I think it'll really even surprise people by how incredibly nice, how incredibly beautiful, which is a word I was told by architects you're not supposed to use about buildings.
Right.
But I think it's going to be...
You love, both of you guys loved Stein. You love 9 DeKalb, and Gregg's is Steinway Tower.
I love 111. I spent, 10 years of my life on it.
Right.
And every time I fly in or drive in, seeing it, it's the first thing you see. It is an incredible feeling.
Right.
But, I love all my children the same.
Thank you so much to both of you guys. I hope you guys are both staying safe. And that's it. Any final words?
New York's going to come back fast and strong as it always does, and it's going to be great to see.
Yeah, for sure. We're all certain of that.